Using this approach greatly reduces the chance of major construction errors. Hello, I'm Kim Ant. 03. Systematic Form Construction. Part 3. Building Accurate Forms Without Failure. In this lesson, we'll use measurement to improve objectivity. We'll practice applying it in a practical drawing process. First, establish the composition and block in the major forms. Then gradually refine them into smaller forms. The composition depends on how the subject is placed on the page. It has a major impact on the overall impression. For this reference, I have already adjusted the composition. I intentionally left slightly more space in front of the fox than behind it. Because the reference image and the paper have different aspect ratios, you should not copy the margins exactly. Instead, maintain the relationship that the front space is slightly larger. Again, since the aspect ratios are different, dividing the reference and copying those divisions directly onto the paper is not the correct approach. Instead, follow this process. First, determine the overall height of the fox and the tree. Decide how large the drawing will be. This measurement determines the overall scale. At this stage, the overall height is your primary reference. Every other measurement will be based on it. That's why the first reference point is so important. The best reference point varies depending on the subject. The overall height is the easiest measurement to establish. So we begin with the height. If you begin with the width, making it too wide may cause the height to exceed the page. If it is too narrow, the entire drawing becomes unnecessarily small. For this reason, starting with the height is more reliable and reduces mistakes. Leave roughly this amount of margin, then divide the height in half. To find the midpoint, estimate the center, then mark it from the bottom. I measured it using the pencil grip as my reference. Repeat the same process from the opposite side. The two estimates will create a small margin of error. The midpoint of that range is the true halfway point. Rather than finding the midpoint within a wide range, first narrow the margin of error, then determine the midpoint for greater accuracy. Apply the same process to the reference. Divide the overall height in half. Estimate the midpoint, measure it with your pencil, and make a mark. Keeping the same measurement, mark the range from the opposite side. Check it once more, then locate the center of the error range. That point is the true midpoint of the height. The point where the fox sits on the tree corresponds to this midpoint in the drawing. This is how measurement allows you to establish positions objectively. Since this drawing will be larger than the reference, you are not copying it at a 1-to-1 scale. Instead, you must enlarge it proportionally. The exact enlargement ratio is not important. What matters is maintaining the proportional relationships. Next, we'll determine the width. At this stage, the most reliable reference is the height you've already established. Every horizontal measurement will be based on this reference. Measure half of the reference height, rotate the pencil horizontally, and see how many times it fits across the width. It fits slightly less than 3 times. Let's verify it once more. It's close to 3. But the final section is about 1/4 shorter than half the height. In other words, using half the height as the unit, the width measures approximately 2 units. Measurements. This importance should be checked at least 3 times. If the width-to-height ratio changes, every internal proportion changes with it. Now, using half the height as the unit, establish the width on the paper. 1, 2, then add approximately 3/4 of another unit. This establishes the overall width. Let's verify it one more time. Using half of the overall height as the unit, 1, 2, then add approximately 3/4 of another unit. The overall width and height have now been established. Next, transfer this width to match the composition you planned at the beginning. Our original composition places the fox slightly closer to the right edge, leaving more space in front of the face. Following that plan, simply shift the established width into position. We'll move it to approximately here. After adjusting the composition, the temporary guide marks can be erased. At this point, the overall dimensions and composition are complete. The fox and the tree will now be placed within this area. Before proceeding, repeat the verification process several more times. Next, divide the paper's width into 2 equal halves. Use the same method as before. Estimate the midpoint first, then verify it from the opposite side. When measuring, using printed text or patterns as visual references can improve accuracy. Now both the vertical and horizontal midpoints are established. Apply the same process to the reference image. Measure across the widest part when finding the midpoint. After marking it, always verify the result. You might notice that this resembles the grid method. However, This is not about creating a grid. It is a method for establishing reference points. As you become familiar with this process, you'll eventually be able to estimate these reference points by eye alone. It is a systematic approach for developing objective observation. For that reason, be sure to practice it repeatedly. Now, using horizontal and vertical references, we'll begin refining the outer silhouette. Use the top or bottom edge of the paper and the left or right edge to establish horizontal and vertical alignments. If you're drawing on an easel, hold the pencil loosely near the tip. Gravity will naturally create a true vertical reference. Compare your measurements in this way. Establish the horizontal and vertical references first, so you can make objective comparisons. This process helps reduce the habit of judging angles subjectively. First, identify the widest point and the highest point. Rather than tracing the outer contour, observe the negative shapes created around the subject. For example, this area can be understood as a simple geometric shape. Begin with the largest shapes as if you were carving them out. To construct these shapes accurately, horizontal and vertical references must be clearly established. Using these references, you can interpret the silhouette as objective geometric forms. The concept of negative space drawing originates from this principle. Use the surrounding negative space to gradually carve into the form. Start by locating the widest point as an approximate reference. Here, approximate does not mean guessing. It means estimating from established reference points. For example, it may be slightly below the midpoint, or slightly below the halfway point of the lower half. The highest point may sit slightly to the left of the horizontal midpoint. These are the kinds of references you should establish. It should be positioned roughly here. Now interpret the remaining space as simple geometric shapes. The form established at this stage is not expected to be perfectly accurate. It serves as an objective structural reference. Think of every form as being divided into progressively smaller parts. Do not begin immediately with small features such as the eyes, nose, or ears. First, establish the overall size of the fox in the tree. Using the midpoint of the overall height as a reference, the fox's overall height is positioned close to the center. The hindquarters sit slightly lower, but the overall balance remains nearly centered. Place the hindquarters slightly below the reference line, and position the chin slightly above it. The tip of the tail and the chin are positioned at nearly the same height. This alignment lies slightly to the left of the horizontal midpoint. If you want to verify the exact proportion, measure this distance and compare the proportions. Avoid drawing the shape immediately. Mark only the position first. The starting point of the hind leg falls roughly between the horizontal midpoint and the hip reference. Continue observing these reference points and mark approximate positions. Perfection is not required at this stage. The important part is maintaining objective references. Repeat the verification process several times. Next, establish the positions of the nose and the front legs. From the facial outline reference, mark the nose slightly to the right, then place the front paw beneath it. Next, determine the positions of the ears, eyes, and mouth. The ear aligns vertically with the tail reference point, at approximately 1/4 of the total height. Again, establish the position using an approximate reference. The key principle of measurement is to continually expand your reference points. Create new reference points, compare them with one another, and repeatedly verify them to determine position and size. The eye is positioned at approximately 1/4 of both the width and height. The mouth lies between the eye and the vertical midpoint. Verify these reference points about 3 times. Once the major positions have been established, begin constructing the forms. Do not complete the shape in a single pass. Refine it through approximately 3 passes, making gradual adjustments each time. With every pass, refine the angles of the straight segments a little more. This method prevents you from simply following the reference, allowing you to objectively control the entire construction process. Think of it like carving a sculpture, gradually refining the form. The primary structural framework should remain stable throughout the process. The internal reference points are only approximate, so they may shift slightly. Continue comparing them and refining them as you work. This process of verification is an essential part of form construction. Make verification a continuous habit. Continue checking horizontal and vertical alignments, and mark the corresponding positions one by one. When training objective observation, avoid thinking in terms of eyes, nose, and mouth. Instead, simplify the subject into geometric shapes first. Only in the final stage should you recognize them as facial features and refine the details. Following the process we've discussed, this is not the end of the process. At this stage, the form is not expected to be perfectly accurate. However, the overall placement has been organized without disrupting the composition. The essential idea of a fox resting on a tree has already been established. This is the most important objective at this stage. As the drawing progresses, the form will continue to be refined. Let's summarize the construction process. First, establish the overall height. Use its midpoint to determine the width and composition. Next, divide the width in half, then continue expanding your reference points. Always think of form as being divided into progressively smaller parts. Instead, use horizontal and vertical references to establish key positions. To verify position and proportion. Simplify the subject into geometric forms, then gradually refine the structure. Finally, apply the individual characteristics of the subject. Every stage should be verified at least 3 times. In summary, establish reference points first, verify them thoroughly, then construct the form through simple geometric shapes. The key principle is not to chase diagonal contours, but to compare horizontal and vertical relationships to establish objective positions and proportions. Build the structure with simple forms first, then develop the final shape on top of that structure. Using this approach greatly reduces the chance of major construction errors. It also allows measurement techniques to transition naturally into accurate freehand observation. Drawing slightly differently from the reference does not mean the drawing has failed. What truly matters is understanding and expressing the structure and characteristics of the subject. Always remember why we study form. If your reference points become inaccurate or the smaller forms begin to drift, causing the structure to collapse, return to the beginning and carefully work through the process again. If you share your construction drawing, I'll provide feedback. Great work today. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to express value with clarity and control.